Historians,
Elves.
Dwarves, lend us your ears.
And a huge thank you to all of our Patreons.
Thank you to the Pit Fighters, the First Swords, and all of the Bright Stars. Truth and Courage.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We've got a very exciting chat coming up with the man who knows his history, he knows his fantasy. I'm sure he's got many recommendations for us today. Michael Kist, thank you for joining us today.
yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I've been mutuals with you guys for a while. I'm also obviously an admirer of your father's work, and got the pleasure of interviewing him as well. And he was as just a wonderful human as I would imagine. So you guys are incredibly lucky to have him. And yeah, I'm incredibly lucky to be here and have the opportunity just chill with you guys and talk about some books that we love and our passion. So let's do it.
Yeah, we can't wait. I imagine Papa Gwyn may crop up in the conversation a few times today. But we always start off with a very important question.
Probably the biggest question out there. Would you choose elves or dwarves?
Okay, so this actually this goes right into like my reading preferences. I was actually turned off by fantasy and still don't love dwarves, or I think I prefer elves now for sure. Uh, but I was actually turned off by fantasy because things were so towards that fantastical side of things. I've grown to appreciate it more as I kind of like reintroduce my fantasy with more like stuff that started off more grounded, right? Like Game of Thrones, Joe Abercrombie, stuff that's not as high fantasy and whatnot. And then I got used to, oh, there's dragons too, and maybe there's some elves and some orcs and some dwarves and whatnot. But I'm definitely going with elves. What about you guys?
See, Papa Gwyn said dwarves because he loves the beards, which I think was targeting us a bit because we're not very good at growing a good beard. I think, you know what? If I choose Legolas or Gimli, I do have to go with Gimli.
Do you? See, I think I'm an elf man, probably. I would choose. They're just so cool. You know, Legolas skateboarding down some stairs, shooting people. I don't think you can top that. Gimli's great for comic relief. But, I mean, we always do boil down to Legolas or Gimli, doesn't it, with elves or dwarves? Are there any elves or dwarves that are as iconic as those two? I don't think there will be, but it sounds like, Michael, like the grounded approach that is kind of maybe comes from like your love of history as well, which definitely makes sense. We've been really excited about the chat today because we have probably loads in common because we're all history nerds, aren't we, and fantasy nerds in our hearts. So no, very excited, and yeah, good choices.
And so, Michael, what was the book that really got you hooked into fantasy?
Into fantasy, I would probably say I think it was about 10 years ago or so, actually a little bit more than 10 years ago. I was traveling for work, and I'd always been a reader and whatnot, but I had been strictly nonfiction for a while. Um, and I came across a Game of Thrones, knew nothing about it. It was the HBO cover. I thought, oh, okay, this looks pretty cool. It's got Ned Stark on the cover and whatnot. So it was a beefy mass market paperback style book and whatnot, and I needed a lot of time to fill. So I was either playing Civilization 5 or I was reading a Game of Thrones while I was flying or in the rental car in the passenger seat or in between clients or whatever. And I just freaking fell in love with it. I hadn't read fantasy since like high school, reading Lord of the Rings, right? Which I enjoyed, but wasn't necessarily something that stuck with me over time. And I just love the grittiness of it, the way everything, even though it was magical, it was more grounded to start with, and it kind of ramped things up. The political intrigue, the violence and whatnot. Did not love the age of the kids. I wish they were aged up a little bit more. That was a little uncomfortable. But I think it was that style that really said like, okay, this is cool. And then he broke so many rules at the time. I don't think people may remember how revolutionary that book was for the genre and how it kind of opened things up, because going into that, it was all kind of like this. We talk about old man fantasy now. It was super old man fantasy before that. Very tropey. Everything was kind of like paint between the lines because it's what publishers wanted. And then Game of Thrones came out and kind of broke the mold. And I remember reading it, and spoilers for Game of Thrones if you haven't seen season one or read the first book. But I remember going, this is like 1,000 pages long. And I get to page 700, and the guy on the cover is dead, and I was like, what is this? This just love that element to it. So that's what got me back into fantasy was definitely A Song of Ice and Fire.
Well, that is some series to dive back into the genre with. You weren't messing about. You started where you meant to continue.
Yeah.
And I guess that
Yeah.
grittiness, subverting tropes, everything you're talking about may have led to you discovering Abercrombie and maybe loving his works.
As soon as I picked up chapter one, I knew I loved the writing style. And chapter one was Logan Nine Fingers, who's an iconic figure in that world. But I felt like, okay, this I don't care what's happening. I know this writing is for me. And then I get to the first Glokta chapter, the torturer. And I'm like, oh, we're cooking now, baby. This is the stuff. This is my guy.
Uh-huh.
And for Abercrombie to take a character like that and make him absolutely lovable and one of the favorites of the series for the fan base is unbelievable because he is not a good human being, and that's also a part of it too, right? That grimdark style, the the morally gray characters and whatnot is what absolutely drove me to Abercrombie and I like both their styles because like Abercrombie is like he comes with a psychology background and it's so obvious in his writing because he's able to get you in the heads of the characters and I found out over time I'm a very character driven reader. I can read a book where I pick up Lonesome Dove and technically nothing happens for the first 250 to 300 pages, but by page 250 I'm completely sold out. I'm completely hooked. We haven't even started this cattle drive yet, but I'm fully in there if the characters are done right. I think, and Abercrombie is great at this. He's on my Mount Rushmore of character writers. I think great characters can save a bad plot. I don't think that bad characters can save a great plot. So that's also kind of what I discovered in my journey going through that kind of like those style. And it's the same thing with Robin Hobb. Fantastic character writer, writes these big 800, 900 page tomes. Love the characters. So yeah, that's kind of how I kind of learned what I was as a reader and what my preferences were definitely through the discovery of George R. R. Martin, Joe Abercrombie, Robin Hobb, those types for sure.
Yeah, like reading taste is always evolving, isn't it? But I feel like
Yeah.
if you've got at the staple of your, like your core, if you love characters, you're always going to gel with these characters. If you've got amazing characters, then you don't mind what you're reading about as long as, you're with those people that you love. And I think like Logan, Glokta, even like Jezal, I just absolutely love those characters. I could probably read about them in any situation and I'll always be smiling or terrified of Logan. But yeah, so some great mentions there.
Yeah, the character investment.
I've often said, oh, I'm sorry, real quick, I've often said I would read a 100-page novella of Glokta climbing stairs. That's how good the character work is on Glokta and how compelling he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've talked about how with fantasy we love the epic scope, but we don't really care if we're not invested in the characters. It's the investment in them that gives the rest meaning. And so I guess we'll go on to talking about some recommendations. So Michael, what are some recent books that you have adored that are quite character focused?
Yeah, so I mentioned Robin Hobb, so I might as well just like plug her series. I love the way my room is set up because I can just look at my shelves during interviews and get and make sure the
We've not
answers
done
come
a
to
good
me.
job. We're like, yeah.
Robin Hobb's Farseer series, and I just finished her Live Ship Traders series. I wrapped that up in February. Just absolutely spectacular, and she is an absolute demon to her readers. She and her characters. She puts them through the ringer with some of the nastiest stuff. But she's absolutely incredible. So I think that's if you're talking character driven, Robin Hobb is one of the best character writers in the business, like kind of like a hands down type deal. I think one that I want to bring up one because that might not get a whole lot of love. I've never actually seen it in the wild is A Woman of the Sword by Anna Smith Spark, and she's kind of known as Queen Grimdark, but she's like lesser known. And A Woman of the Sword is about this aging woman, a little older protagonist, who's got these two kids. She's a retired warrior. Disaster strikes in the beginning of the book, and we really get inside of her head, and it is. None of it is sugar coated. All of it is so very real. And like, I feel like she's going through like extended postpartum depression. Um, she has thoughts that no mother would admit out loud, and if they did, you would think they were a monster kind of thing.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it just like the way you get sucked into her head is just some absolutely beautiful character work. I don't know if you're supposed to love her, hate her. I have no clue, but I'm just utterly compelled by her and her thought process. I don't know if you guys have read that one, but I think that I would be fascinated to hear your thoughts on it.
That book destroyed me. I mean, I've read all of Anna's work so far. I've been reading her for
Mm,
years, but her prose is just unlike anyone else. I think the only person who has prose that reminds me of hers is like Cormac McCarthy. It's just
yeah,
so special.
it's psychotic.
Yeah, it is. It is. She's got this flair to her that is crazy. She did a collab with Michael Fletcher, who's also a grimdark writer. I think it's called In the Shadow of Their
Mm,
Dying, and she wrote in this monster's perspective, and like no one else could get away with it. But it was just so dark. She fully leans into like the heavy metalness of her prose, and it's just so good. But yeah, A Woman with a Sword was crazy, and reading from a mother's perspective in a war, she's got this hidden past. She's looking out for her children as well, and the way like their relationships mold and shift and change throughout the story is just brutal, and it's so good. But it feels so real, and it's that book that has like a real emotional streak as well. So yeah, completely agree with you.
yeah.
Great choice.
I would also like, some characters that are kind of like in that mold. There's always like The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, where not a whole lot happens in that book in like the first act or anything like that, but it's just one of those things where like the banter and the characters kind of draw you in. And he's got like this almost a polar opposite to Anna Smith Spark in terms of his prose style. He's very he can verge on or play around with being overindulgent at times with it. The character work is so brilliant. The banter is amazing, and like I said, if the banter is good, if the characters are good, I'll stick around with them for anything. And then the other one I would say the one I'm reading right now, I am hooked on the Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. And even though the first book reads like a narrative history book, it changes to a more traditional style in book two. And you realize all the groundwork that was laid down by the first book. I got, even with it being like that snappier style where like maybe 3 paragraphs in the first book would be extended out to 30 pages in the second book, where like we're really examining these scenes and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it kind of affects the dialogue in the first book. I still found myself like really rooting for these characters. It was such a well-rounded book that explored so many different themes. It's like this, like part of it's like silk punk, which is like an offshoot of steampunk, and the way he describes that, I'm like, this guy's an actual freaking genius. And then also the characters are so easy to root for, even when they're on opposite sides of this conflict. So I think as I get further into book two, I think the more and more I'll respect Ken Liu's game in terms of being able to write like these three-dimensional, fleshed out characters that you really get hooked into, because I've already got like 4 or 5 favorites that I love their chapters. So yeah, I would say that's another one that I really dig. And I know you guys saw that I did a Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield review where I gave it 5 stars, and I was really impressed with the cast of characters in that one as well. Obviously, like the Battle of the 300 like serves as the big like plot line and whatever, but I was surprised at the depth of the characters and how much I loved characters like Rooster and Diana Keys and his wife, Arete, I want to say is her name, Arete. I'm not sure on the pronunciation, but she was incredible. Polynikes was a very interesting character. Comes off as a total prick at first, but after a
Yeah.
while, you're kind of like, yeah, I kind of get what you're laying
Hmm.
Yeah.
down, man. You're in the context of this society, you're making some good points, even if you're super aggressive about it. But what can we expect in that society? So Gates of Fire would be another one as well. So yeah, those are a handful of books that I really appreciate the character work in.
Oh yeah, we both adore Gates of Fire, and I
Yeah.
think of Polynices so much because I love a character that
What would Polynikes do?
You really hate. Yeah, but I won't live by that rule.
No, no.
But I love a character that you really hate at first, and then even though their personality doesn't change, you start to see their perspective, and that just flips how you think about them. I think that is just it's so true to reality, and it is incredible to see that represented in a book, which is so rarely done. Obviously, page time is the enemy in many cases. And there's so many characters, but Polynikes, what a character!
Yeah, like there were some crazy decisions at the end with his character that Pressfield made that suddenly I was like, I would do anything for this man.
Yes.
Like I'd follow him anywhere. It was just crazy. I think
Because he's not just hot air. He's like he's really about it.
Yeah.
He's not BSing you. He's about it.
no, there's no
He lives and
shit.
breathes
Yeah,
it.
exactly. He literally just goes in for it. He's a crazy guy, but insanely written. And I think that battle that Pressfield wrote was one of the most. That first chapter with the stones and the markers was one of the most like visceral things I've ever read. And it just I think about it all the time.
The
Yeah.
thing with books that are that
Yeah.
good, though, is Gates of Fire actually ruined like historical fiction for me for a while because everything was just being compared to that. And I just couldn't get over it for about probably 6 months. And then suddenly I found some more historical fiction that I loved. But yeah, sometimes a book is just too good. And Gates of Fire, I think, is one of them.
Yeah.
And for like I think it's very hard to write battle scenes in a way that's absolutely incredible. I think, your father writes incredible battle scenes, incredible fight scenes. You can tell he's a reenactor and whatnot. There's like that level of nuance to it. So your Papa Gwyn, Pressfield, my first exposure to him is just like incredible battle scenes. Abercrombie's past the POV baton style that he's done in a few times now, but I think the one I think of is from the Heroes, which blew my mind, and that's what really I think like it's easy to get bored in some of the battle scenes sometimes if they're not done well and you don't really necessarily care about the characters. But like with like somebody like Abercrombie, he's not just passing the POV baton to a character that you already know and love or have interest in. He's passing the POV baton to a character you've never met before. And he has that long to get you in their head, make you either understand them or be sympathetic to them or whatever. And 500 words, he will be able to hook you in. Some writers can't do that in 500 pages. And it's incredible. So he's fantastic at that too. So I think that and like, sort of Kaigen by Emma Wong, the battle scenes in that are incredible as well and have such emotional depth to them and hook you. So yeah, I think that's another talent as well, not just character work, but being able to write battle scenes that you don't feel like skimming or you don't get like fatigued from,
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think we could geek out together about Abercrombie for like days and days. And the Heroes is what his fifth book in the First Law world, and he's still like reinventing the wheel. Like it's just so impressive, and the way that it comes out of nowhere. Like now, kind of, I guess we're going to expect it from him in different scenarios, but seeing that in
Yeah, there's a
Heroes
high
for the
bar.
first time,
Right.
it just absolutely like blew my tiny mind. It was just crazy. And seeing, I mean, he's got you can tell he plays Total War because he's got a feel for like all the maneuvering and that kind of stuff and like the different units and stuff and terrain. And I love that. His battles are crazy. But you're completely right. To write a battle that you're not tempted to like kind of glaze over or find your favorite character's name is so impressive. But to be like hooked on a new character you've never met before and you're with them for like 2 pages and you still remember their name, it's just so impressive. He's like one of the goats forever.
Yeah, and now as we're on the
No, go ahead. Go
Get
ahead.
away first.
I was gonna say the part of the fun of that is I love when a character views a character that we've had the POV of before, right? So like Giselle seeing Logan Nine Fingers in the wild and describing Logan Nine Fingers from his point of view. When we've been chilling with Logan for a while, we think we understand him, and then it's like this guy is scared of a toilet, right? Like he's like he's fascinated by a fountain, like he's a total caveman or whatever. But then you get to see like in those battles, and you see like Brimmer Gorst run through like an absolute maniac when you're not in his POV, when you're just in like some common soldier, you're like this guy's absolutely insane, and it kind of gives you that perspective shift on the main characters, so it still adds value to the main characters in the story. You're just getting it from somebody else,
Yeah.
and I think it's fascinating. Anyway, sorry, I wanted to mention that, but
Oh,
go.
oh no, I completely agree. That's incredible, and I love the Giselle Logan kind of perspectives on each other. When you're the best man I know, fantastic moment. And then Logan just dips his head.
Yeah.
But I'm going to
Yes.
put on the spot here. What is your favorite Abercrombie book that you've read?
Oh, The Trouble with Peace. The Trouble with Peace, which is the second book in the Age of Madness. It's the ninth book in the world. So Age of Madness being the second trilogy. I think the way we see Abercrombie mature throughout the books is so obvious in terms of the pacing, right? If I were to look at everything that's wrong with the Blade itself, which I love the Blade itself, but I understand it's not a perfect book. The women characters have come under fire. He even recognized that and said that it was poor writing on my behalf, and I got better at it, and he did get much better at it because a lot of the characters introduced later on, some of my favorites are women. Um, and the pacing of the Blade itself, the fact that it didn't have a plot, just were to ask one question, we wouldn't have had to waited till midpoint book two to get the major plot. I think all of the issues with the Blade itself and the experiments that Joe made and the improvements that he made throughout writing those previous books set him up to just like hatred. And then The Trouble with Peace just took everything that was there and took all the best elements of Abercrombie and just delivered us an absolute masterpiece of a book. So I would go with The Trouble with Peace. I think The Wisdom of Crowds is really good. I think The Last Argument of Kings is really good. I love The Heroes, but I would have to give the nod to The Trouble with Peace because I think it fully encapsulates the genius of Joe Abercrombie and when he's at his best on top of his game in all the various elements of writing. I think that's the best example of it.
And that final battle like shocked me.
Yeah,
Like
the
my
convergence
mouth
of
was like
Yes.
the whole time, and that was like, yeah, I think of that battle all the time. Yeah, no, great choice.
Yeah, and Ed, yours is the heroes, isn't it?
I think mine. I think because of Bremer Dan Gorst, my
Of course.
favorite of the heroes. Like it's just so good how he's done. And Wirren of Bly, you've got some iconic characters
Our big lovable simp.
with the best voice in the world. Bless him. But no, I think yeah, the heroes is just genius. And last time I reread Red Country, I really loved it. I mean, I'm a
Yeah.
big like Western fan anyway. I know we'll be talking about Lonesome Dove very soon, I'm sure. But yeah, no, I think after I reread Lonesome Dove, then did Red Country, and
Yes.
it was just so good. And the pacing there, maybe it does kind of peter out, maybe just after the middle, probably, but.
Mm.
You've still got these amazing characters, and there is a climax around the middle in Crease that is just like completely bonkers.
Yes.
And yeah, he gets away with so much, but it's just brilliant. His characters are going to stay with us forever, and I can't see anyone else having characters that diverse and that good. It's just crazy.
I mean, it's just showing off, isn't it? Most authors
Yeah.
find it hard to create one incredible character, and then like in the first trilogy, he's got like four that are just outstanding. That are my favorite characters of all time.
And I love
It's not
how
fair.
he does that head hopping, that passing the baton in the last trilogy when it's like a revolution and things
Yeah.
going crazy in the streets and everyone's burning stuff, and it's done so well. But it's interesting because it reads like a battle scene, doesn't it? But it's actually not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now changing the topic slightly.
Yeah. And I told you I was going to fight for biggest Abercrombie fan.
Yeah, we'll return. We'll challenge
Go, go, go,
the
go.
circle.
Yeah.
But changing the topic slightly, how do you manage balancing your reading between non-fiction, historical fiction, and fantasy?
Yeah, so I've always got my reading kind of goes one fiction on me at all times, one nonfiction on me at all times, and one manga just to switch it up if I feel like ripping through like Berserk or Death Note or something like that, something different. And it's just so I can it the only purpose of that is well, I love all the genres and I want to read different genres. But the main purpose of that is it allows me to be just like the ultimate mood reader, right? So like when I wake up in the morning, I wake up at 7 o'clock. I usually read for about 2 hours every morning. This morning I read the biography on Catherine the Great that I'm working on. This afternoon, when I get out in the sun and whatnot, I'll probably rip through an hour or two of the Grace of Kings, and then later that night I might pick up the manga Death Note, and then. There are other days where, like, once I see the finish line of a book, if I see the finish line of Grace of Kings and I've got like 200 pages left, I might just go binge on that, right? And then I'll go finish Catherine the Great. I'll pick up a different fiction book to put in the stack. But like, I'll always have a stack like this on me. These are actually my current manga, and I've got Buffalo Hunter, and then the Achilles Trap. This will be the stack that goes with me from room to room because I've got my nonfiction, my fiction, and my manga. So I'll just have this carried around with me at all times. And then whatever I feel like picking up, I'll pick them up. So that's kind of how I balance it. And I get that question a lot in terms of like, how do you read multiple books at the same time? Well, the Achilles Trap is going to be nothing like Buffalo Hunter. There's no way for me to confuse that in my head with the characters and whatnot. And like, I do everything I can to like boost comprehension because I understand I'm taking in a lot of information over the course of a month. So if it's got an audiobook, I'll immersion read it. So physical plus the audio, so I'm getting both inputs. And especially with my history books, I never read a history book without a highlighter on hand, so I can active read, highlight different things that I'm interested in or want to refer back to, or maybe things that would be useful for a review or something like that. And that active reading also boosts comprehension. So I'm just trying to like eke out every advantage I can when it comes to like making sure nobody's going to retain everything they read. That's just not possible. But I think I do retain a decent amount comparatively if I weren't doing all those different hacks essentially.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's dangerous watching your videos because I suddenly add like 6 books to my cart and I'm like, I need these now because you've sold me on each and every one.
Yeah.
Even the ones that sometimes you say you didn't really click on, but you highlight the bits that did work. And I'm like, yeah, I'm still going to get it. Yet alone the ones that you
Yeah.
love and you really, really push. And so, yeah, the wallet has taken damage from that.
And I was gonna ask you, Michael, how have you got these big arms? But I understand now because you're lugging 3 books everywhere you go, so it all makes sense now.
That's the work-life balance, man. You know. Um,
So that is multitasking.
that's why I quit my That's why I quit my job to do this full time because I got to read, I got to work out, I got to spend time with the family. There's only so many hours in a day, and we gotta make use for them. And I think that's the thing too, right? Like just like building out a routine that you love, and like. And the same thing for reading with like lifting too, or working out or doing cardio. If you don't like the type of cardio you're doing, you're never going to be able to stick to it. If you don't like what you're reading, you're never going to be able to stick to it, which is why I watch guys like you and other creators to get tremendous recs from, because before joining like the book community, it was kind of like a crapshoot, right? But then as you get into the book community and you start seeing these creators where your taste aligns so much, and I can go, man, if it works for you in this way, it's probably going to work for me. And that just like, if I can go through a month and have an average star rating of 4 stars, then why wouldn't I read? I'm freaking loving it. I'm living it, right? I got two 5-star reads in a month. Hell yeah. And that makes it a lot easier too. I might not like running on pavement, but I can get on the stationary bike and I can do that for an hour. You know what I mean? If I like that, then I'll do it more.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how I attack it, and then I just make it part of the routine. I just do it every freaking day because I get excited to wake up in the morning. People don't want to wake up and get moving. I can't when I'm up and I'm like, as soon as that first dose of caffeine hits, books in hand, and I'm having the time of my freaking life. The house is quiet, and this is all for me right now. So yeah, I love it.
I think it's like the best reading hack to like diversifying your reading, having multiple genres, having multiple books on the go, having different mediums to enjoy them in,
Yeah.
because there are some books that translate fantastically to audiobook, and
Yes.
Zombies one, and there are other books that probably don't translate as well to audio. But doing immersive reading as well. I think that's the one thing I always say to people, just try and diversify
Yeah.
reading as much as possible. Read different genres, read things that make you, maybe you aren't drawn to straight away, but listen to someone's opinions, see what
Yeah.
they enjoy about it.
It's the
And
antidote
like
to
Will,
reading
yeah,
slumps.
it is. And Will's completely right. It's dangerous watching your videos because, like, especially with non-fiction, I feel like I know almost every book in the fantasy genre. Like I've seen them. I kind of know
Yeah.
what they're about because you're so much in the community. But then someone along like you, Michael, comes along and you're reading fantasy and non-fiction. I'm like, oh,
Oh.
oh, there's a non-fiction book I've never heard of. I'm gonna need to buy them all. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
dangerous. It's great though. I love it. The book community is just fantastic, and it's the best community to be in.
Yeah, that does lead me on to my next question. You've been on TikTok for a while. More recently, you've made the move over to YouTube. What inspired you to start content creation?
Yeah, so I was working in sports media for since 2017. I started out making a pretty big career change then, going into sports media, covering the Philadelphia Eagles and the NFL, and I was doing that full time as an on-air audio host, producer, writer, all that stuff. And I was obsessed with that stuff, man. I was a film junkie, watching the all 22, breaking it down, talking with getting in players' DMs and like asking them what happened on a specific play and whatnot, and just absorbed in it. And I did that for 4 years. Me and my partner, my co-host Benjamin Solak, who is now with ESPN, we were just a great freaking tandem, and we had so much success. I mean, we had 21 million downloads in our first 3 years
Wow.
for our podcast, which is
Yeah.
crazy. We started from 0 subscribers. They lost their feed when I came in, so we had to resuscitate it from nothing.
Yeah.
That got me. I was already comfortable talking on camera and whatnot, but that got me even more like
Yeah.
analyzing it, getting the reps in, doing 1,000 podcasts. I was doing podcasts daily, so just on the mic daily. That got me really comfortable with talking and whatnot, and in my manner of delivery, and just kind of like seeking out coaching for it too, talking with longtime radio hosts and people that had done it for a while, and just learning these different tricks. So anyway, I get promoted to run all of our company's sports podcasts. I do that for about 3 years. And it got to the point where my company was under a different umbrella company, essentially. And this umbrella company was essentially taking these other verticals that they had, soaking up their revenue, and then putting them towards other projects. So we were like pretty neglected in terms of like the new investment that was coming into us. So I kept pitching these new things. Dude, I promise you, I was telling them about Jason Kelsey 3 years before Jason Kelsey got his podcast with Travis. They were asking who's the next big thing, and I said it's Jason Kelsey, it's Jason Kelsey, it's Jason Kelsey. And we even had a guy who had a great relationship with Travis Kelsey, and I'm like, we can get them on a podcast together. Like this is the thing, right? 3 years later, they decide they're going to do a podcast. Our umbrella company doesn't even try to match their initial offer. The initial offer was like $150,000 for the rights for a year. It's worth millions now.
Yeah.
I was pissed at that. I was like, man, if we can't even make a pitch like that, what are we doing?
Yeah.
So I just got really disenfranchised and really bored creatively because I knew nothing that I was going to throw up to them worth anything was going to go anywhere. And not only that, I had a fantastic team around me. That really smart individuals working under me that I barely had to manage. In fact, they would teach me a lot of things a lot of the time. So I had a great time with them. So the ship at that point ran itself. So, I had survived 5 or 6 layoffs up to that point, and I was just like, man, they're probably going to come for me one day. So back in October 2023, I was like, let me play around with, actually, it was a little bit before that. I started playing around with, I'm a big F1 fan. I made like a F1 TikTok where I was just compiling different clips and whatnot, and did a series called like Ferrari Disaster Class, and I went viral with that. And I was like, okay, now I think I understand the TikTok algorithm and so on and so forth. So why don't I just talk about books?
Yeah.
Because that's my passion. I have nobody to talk about it with in my real life. I was kind of like missing that connection. I was missing being in front of a microphone since I wasn't doing that anymore, and I'd done it for so long. So I started doing that, and then I realized what a underserved audience there is for nonfiction, and that blew up so freaking quick. And I was like, okay, maybe there's something here. Um, and then I was laid off in April 2020, 2024, and I was like, okay, cool, cool, cool. Had a job the next day, but that didn't really end up panning out. They kind of overextended themselves, so I was just kind of like doing it to like make sure I had the money saved up to make this move
Mhm.
eventually to where I would do it full time. So that's essentially just where it came from. Sports media being the business of it being a freaking mess, and just being bored creatively and needing some sort of outlet. And I'm very pleased with how things have gone, and having found this community, having found my personal community too, the sickos. So yeah, it's been one of the coolest things that I've ever done. Did not expect it to be this successful or fun. And now I wake up and when I read, that's working. Which again, that's a beautiful freaking thing to say, like I can do this for my job.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's my backstory, essentially in a nutshell.
Yeah, the butterfly effect is crazy, isn't
Mm.
it? If one thing didn't happen, then none of
Hmm.
the rest would have. You wouldn't be here reading from 7 to 9 for doing this immersive reading, and we wouldn't be hearing all your recommendations. It's crazy, isn't it? But
Yeah.
yeah, it's awesome to have you on here, and it's yeah, the amount of recommendations you've given us. So if you could pick any period of history, someone says, "I'm going to pay you for 6 months to do a deep dive research," which period and where are you choosing?
Punic Wars. Absolutely. I mean, this is the for the viewers. This is the Battle of Cannae,
Mhm.
right? You've got the blue are the Carthaginians, the red are the Romans, and this is like the first recorded pincer movement in ancient history with
Wow.
the Numidian cavalry coming behind, right? The Carthaginian line
Mhm.
makes this bag. They fall back, but then they trap the Romans and whatnot, and they slaughter them at Cannae. The Punic Wars is something that is probably my favorite subject of all time when it comes to Hannibal versus Scipio and crossing the Alps and all that all the stuff we've heard of before, but even before that, the first Punic War, and then the third as well. Like that whole span, two superpowers duking it out for domination of the Western Mediterranean is like essentially the ancient version of what if the Cold War actually stopped being cold and got hot. Um, it had that much of an impact
Yeah.
on history and the people that lived in those regions. So I would definitely say the Punic Wars is my go-to. In fact, one of my next history reads after the Achilles Trap is I'm going to go back to that. I'm going to read Patrick Hunt's Hannibal biography because I haven't read that yet, and I've heard that's like the best single volume Hannibal bio.
Yeah, Carthage is like so underrated, I feel. I
Yes.
mean, and Carthage is mentioned in Joe Abercrombie's The Devils, so his new book. So I think it's going to come back into fashion. People need to rediscover the beauty of Carthage. I mean, we played Total War since we were, just out the womb, really, haven't
Yeah,
we? And,
basically.
and Carthage was always just great fun to play with. But who would you like? Is there an author you'd recommend for us to try who's like the guy to know about Carthage?
Before I give you that rec, I'll also note that in Artificial Wisdom by Thomas Weaver, uh, one of the cities is New Carthage, and I remember reading it, and he was describing this harbor, and I was like, this is the great harbor of Carthage. And I DM'd him, and I was like, I see you, I see what you're
Yeah,
doing.
yeah, yeah.
This is this, this is this,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
this, and he was like, yeah, I love Carthaginian history. So we actually
No
started a
way.
relationship based off that. There were so many
Nice.
references that I understood. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, this is so coded for me.
Yeah.
Um, this is super exciting. Crazy thing to nerd out about, but yeah.
But it came in handy.
Yeah.
I'm I'm doing a top 10 I'm updating my top 10 history books of all time video soon for short form. And right up there towards the tippity top is Carthage Must Be Destroyed by Richard Miles.
Yeah.
And that's an easy one if you see the cover and whatnot to think like, oh, this is Roman history. And like sort of because the Romans are a big player in the history of Carthage because
Yeah.
of those wars and because they're eventually the ones that take Carthage down. But this goes from the very beginning, from their days as a Phoenician trading settlement back in like the 9th century BC,
Mhm.
and then takes you through that 700-year history. It's a very Carthaginian story. Miles made a point to like seek out as many Carthaginian sources as he could, so he wasn't just going off of like Livy and Polybius.
Yeah.
So I would say that's the one that got that sold me on Carthaginian history being, like you said, underrated and fascinating. So Carthage Must Be Destroyed would be my recommendation for that for sure.
Well,
Okay.
thank you. And talking
Consider it
about
bought.
recommendations, yeah, basically, Paul. Straight after this is finished, that's where we're going. But talking about recommendations, what is one history book or series you would recommend to fantasy lovers if you could only choose one?
Oh, for fantasy lovers. Okay, go full circle here with the conversation, right? Game of Thrones. I think the reason why Game of Thrones works so well is because it has this base in real history that's absolutely fascinating, and that is the Wars of the Roses. So I remember thinking like with English history, I'm like, it's so like the Wars of the Roses is so complicated. There's so many different moving pieces. I'll never be able to like just like get my head around it. But I
They've all
was
got the
like,
same names.
there's so many Edwards
Yeah.
and so many Henrys and Johns and so on and so forth. And then they change their names and you just call them whatever they're the Duke of or whatever. There's so many different moving parts. But then I was like, but I understood Game of Thrones, so like maybe I'll get this. And then I picked up Dan Jones's. Just talking about my top 10 history books of all time. This is one of them. I picked up Dan Jones's the Wars of the Roses. Actually, I read the Plantagenets first, and then I read the Wars of the Roses. But I read the Wars of the Roses, and I was like, I get it now.
Yeah.
Now it's clicking for me. What helped me was that is I was also watching the limited series on Stars, The White Queen and The White Princess, which are
Yes.
amazing. They're like the historical fiction shows. But it was allowing me to like take the actors' faces and put them on the characters, and it worked so freaking well for me to do that in tandem. Again, just trying to find every hack that I can to like help my comprehension. So yeah, that would be the one where it's like if you want to read the real story of what inspired Game of Thrones, maybe your favorite fantasy book, read The Wars of the Roses, and that might get you out of the mindset of maybe what is making you afraid of learning history, which is the fact that when you got taught history in school, it was stuffy and it was a textbook and it was boring and your teacher sucked and didn't care, and like making you realize and people think I might read history for all like this high-minded stuff. Half the time it's because I just want the tea. I want the messy stuff. Some of my favorite periods in Roman history, right? The fall of the Roman Republic. The reason it's so fascinating is because you get fascinating, messy, complicated people like Caesar, like Cicero, like Claudia, like Cato, like these hypocrites that are contradictions, but also just like fascinating. And they're very, very human and very real. And if you have enough source material behind them, you can see just how fun it is and why, and understand why so many fantasy and fiction books pull their ideas from that real history. So another long-winded answer, but yeah, Wars of the Roses by Dan Jones is my
Yeah, I mean,
recommendation.
we're huge Dan Jones fans. I just read Henry V. I know that you really enjoyed that as
It's
well.
awesome.
I feel like the first the present tense shift with that book just
Yes.
was so good. It feels like groundbreaking. So I'm buzzing to read more nonfiction. We've actually met Dan Jones and he's just a great guy.
So
We've
cool.
interviewed him and he's so much fun. He's like just got so much wisdom, so much knowledge,
And he's so funny.
he puts it across
Yes.
in such a great way. But he's that guy.
I mean, I've
Definitely.
said before, if you send a load of Dan Jones books into every school and make them compulsory reading in history classes, everyone would love history.
Yeah.
It would just change so much.
Dan Jones, who I met too in Miami, he was doing a book signing. I made sure to go to that.
Nice.
He was taller than I thought, and
Huge.
very.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
I'm 6 foot, and I was like, brother, you're. I actually said to him, I'm like, you're freaking huge. I
Yeah.
did not expect that. I was like, you kind of give Short King energy, and it was like, I get that a lot actually.
Yeah. And he said Dan Snow is even bigger, which
Yeah.
I didn't see. That.
Really?
Yeah. Dan Snow apparently is enormous.
Oh.
Yeah.
well, Ed decided the really important question to ask him was who would win in an arm wrestle, you or Dan?
He said Dan Snow. So yeah.
So there you go.
Mhm.
But
He's
yeah,
got great taste in shoes too. Um, awesome kicks. So I would say if you put Dan Jones and Emma Southern,
Hmm.
if you like Dan Jones for English history, Emma Southern for Roman history,
Yeah.
you would get so many people back into history because they're the most fun that you're going to read, and you're going to have reading history. Those two are just like, yeah, they're incredible and they're so accessible,
Yeah.
and they're
yeah.
just like it's so different from like that stuffy image you might get in your head if you're afraid of reading history. So yeah, get yourself some Southern and some Jones for sure.
And David Mitchell as well. We read
Mm.
Unruly, which is that the history of English monarchs. And it's so funny. And what I love about that book is that David Mitchell says, we all have opinions. We all choose a side. Battle of
Yep.
Hastings, we always pick the Saxons. We know they're going to lose. But I think, that is part of why I love history so much, because you can find corners to get yourself in. You can choose things. You can find things that you're really passionate about, and then pick a side. It's fun. It makes it exciting, and I
Yeah.
I love that approach. And I think nonfiction is changing for the better. We're moving into accessibility, but also like fun, because history is so much fun, and I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then flipping the coin slightly, if you could pick one fantasy book or series for those that love history, what would you pick?
So now I get to look at the
Yeah, now
beautiful.
the shell's come in handy again.
Yeah. So I think I I like the flipping the Game of Thrones thing back too. I mentioned Dandelion Dynasty earlier before, which is that first book reads like a narrative history book. If you're accustomed to reading like those narrative history styles, I think you'll really vibe with that because that's based on the Chuhan contention period. I think the third century BC, which has really got me wanting to read more Chinese history.
Yeah.
Now as well. I did a video on this on YouTube, talking about if you like this fantasy, read this history, and vice versa and whatnot. I think if you're into Viking history, I know that your father used like Children of Ash and Elm as a resource and whatnot. So if you're big into Viking history, definitely Bloodsworn. I'll definitely plug that. I like that connection.
We'll
So
pay
I
you
think those,
later.
yeah, right. I mean, I legitimately put that in the video because I think that's a great connection. If you do like Viking history, if you do like like the sagas and whatnot in the mythology and all that stuff, I think he does a great job of making a new world out of that. So yeah, I think those three series would be really good. Even after a while, like we talked about Abercrombie, I'll plug him again, but Age of Madness feels very French Revolution
Yeah.
style of thematic work that I think people really like. And then there are some that I want to read, like what's the Shelley Parker Chan series?
Yeah, she
Um,
Jane the Sun.
yeah,
Yeah.
based on Mongolian history. I want to get into that. Oh, and if you like Irish history, the Gale Song trilogy by Shauna Lawless.
Yeah.
So
Great
good.
choice.
It's freaking awesome. It has one of my favorite female characters. Again, if I love a character, I'll stick with it.
Mhm.
Gormla is freaking
So good.
amazing. So based on Irish history and mythology. So that's another good one too,
Yeah.
if you're a history lover.
Yeah, she's the Irish version of Cersei, definitely.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's a great character. Great choices as well.
Have you read the novellas for Goulsung?
I haven't. I just finished book two in March, so
Hmm.
now I need to read the novellas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
And I'm
for me.
I'm such a paperback fan, and I have the first two in paperback, and the third one's only out in hardcover. I discovered that after I finished the second book, and I was like, do I want to wait or do I want to get it? Do I want to read it on Kindle?
that
Like
is hard.
how do I want to do this? Because I just want to have them all in the same
Yeah.
format, man.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But the novellas, I love that. It feels like even with so much in the genre, fantasy's still evolving, and the way she uses the novellas to have their own independent story, but also enriching the world, is incredible. And I think you're going to love them.
It feels so fresh that it's Viking history but set in Ireland, because we're all used to, the Burn of Cornwall. The Vikings go to England. It's tried, it's tested, it's fun, but the Viking world was so diverse. It was so broad, and seeing books that are tackling them going to Ireland, them going to Micklegarth, and those kind of places is so exciting. Robert Lowe does a historical fiction series where these Danish guys go all the way to Constantinople and even into the Arabian lands, and that is so good. I've never read Viking fiction that is as accurate as that. And he was a reenactor in our group as well, so that was really really cool. But yeah, no, yeah, great shout. Yeah. So talking about fantasy and history, why do you feel like fantasy lovers really enjoy having history put into their books, and how do you feel like the landscape of fantasy is changing?
I mean, fantasy, one of the big things in fantasy is world building,
Mm.
right? It's it's the lore of it. Um, so I think there's you have to have some element of history if you're going to have an epic fantasy. So you're just it's the skeleton that makes the story work. So I think there's just like a natural connection there. If you read a contemporary, fiction book based like in modern times, you don't need all that rich world building, history, lore, myth, like all of that stuff that impacts the way that the current characters are acting, the religion and like everything that goes into it, the politics of it, and the history of that, and the way that world evolves and how people move in it. So I think there's just that natural connection because of the world building. In terms of where it's going, I don't know if I don't know if this is going to be a thing, but I would love to see it be a thing. It's just like authors taking more gambles in terms of like really trying something new.
Mm.
I think The Spear Cuts Through Water is a great example of that by Simon Jimenez, where he's got like he uses all three different perspectives. It's such an unconventional story. It's such a vibrant world. It's so delightfully weird. And it's one of those books, and I want to see more of this where it's not like I'll give an example. There are a lot of books out there that we see on Book Talk and what in BookTube that like are so like widely appealing, where like they have high floors, where even if you don't give it 5 stars, a lot of people are probably at least going to give it 4. I like books that I can connect with where you're either giving it 5 stars or you're DNFing it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Spirit Cuts Through Water is kind of one of those all or nothing books because it's so unique, because it's so different, because it's so uh, each reader that picks it up is going to experience it so differently.
Yeah.
I want to see more of that, and I want to see more of the standalone, so that I get and being able to tell that story within one book. I think there are a lot of series out there where we're taking a one book idea and stretching it to 3 books, and that's how we get that second book syndrome.
Yeah.
I think that's a publishing industry thing that's kind of like forcing the issue on that. I don't think that's going to change, so I don't think I'm directly answering your question. I would like to see it changed. I would like to see more unique single freaking books. Tell me the story in one book and make it really weird and unique and take a risk.
Yeah.
Publishers probably are scared to do that.
Yeah.
Because I mean it's about the bottom line for them. You know, Eurocentric type stories, trilogies, they know that stuff will freaking sell.
Yeah.
Show me something like and even if it's like something like the Forever Desert series, like Moses Osiatomi, which is a trilogy of novellas, which you can actually read in like you could probably read that whole series in 2 days. But that is so unique and different and gives me Spirit Cuts Through Water vibes, African inspired. Give me more stuff I haven't seen before. Take a gamble. That's what I want. So that's me dodging your question and coming up with something that's probably a pie in the sky type thing. But that's what I want to see.
No, it's really
I love
interesting
that,
you
yeah.
say that because I've just finished writing my first book and we're looking at pitching it in the next few months, but it's a standalone, but for a new
Nice.
author to try and get a deal, like it's a risk, isn't it? You go in with
Yeah.
just one book, you say this is they might give you a deal for one book, and they might say we'll see how it sells, and then if it doesn't sell, then we
That
won't
might be,
sign
yeah.
you. But then I can't see publishers saying I want 3 standalones from you. So you're
Right.
right. The publishers have to be firmer, have to be
Yeah.
more confident in themselves to actually sell this book, because if they've got a lot of people, 100 people submitting a Western-inspired fantasy set in a medieval-esque world, multi-POV, where the stakes are high and it's very grimdark,
Yeah.
they know that's really popular, so it's going to sell. Let's sign them for 4 books, for 3 books, and then
Yeah.
it's more money, isn't it?
And also, they put so much marketing into book ones, don't they? And then kind of let book two and three market themselves. So when they see
Yeah.
a standalone, I think they have to think, well, we're putting more money in for less return, which is a shame.
Yeah.
I'd love to see a compromise on duologies. I think a duology is a great length.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think duologies is like that's kind of like that you get like the best of both world there, both worlds there, and I think that applies to like some of that what we're talking about applies to history too, because when I went to that Dan Jones event, he said something like his friend was asking, or a person asked about if he was going to do like a history of Wales or something like that, and he said he actually had a friend ask him that, and he was like, but I want to sell books. The publisher's never going to go for that.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like he may want to write a whole history about this
yeah,
specific topic, this specific region, but at the end of the day, the publisher is either going to publish it or not, and it's either going to sell or not. If it doesn't sell, you're not eating, your family's not eating, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is like, yeah, that's it sucks to hear. I would like to read that book, but publishers got to be willing to make it and push it.
yeah. They want instant success, don't they? And
Yeah.
well, we're Welsh, so we'd definitely read it. There's not many of us out there, so yeah. But yeah.
But it'd be interesting to maybe talk in a year's time and see if anything's changed, because there's like a lot of talk about the Simon and Schuster new head of the publishers who's trying to push a very different direction. And he said that
Tell us more, Will.
the book industry is one of the only industries that kind of lets other people market their work for them.
Yeah.
And they want to become more, they want publishers to become more well known and household names. They want authors to be recognizable. So I think they're going to create their own mini shows.
Funny because you look at like film studios, don't you? Like A24, they're like a household name now. You see A24 on a poster, and you're like, that's going to be high quality. It's going to be weird. It's going to have an original concept. Let's go see it. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and another point they made was that basically they preached to the converted, people who already read loads, and people always talk about, not enough people read, but not really much is being done about that, even though so many people would read. I think even I've got a lot of friends who have started reading romantasy and now they read epic fantasy. Just those avenues, creating more of them, I think can create a lot of change and hopefully allow more standalones.
Yeah.
Yeah, the gateway thing, and I've now have my own publishing imprint with Bindery, and we'll be taking pitches for that soon, and I think Bindery is really special because it really does focus on trying to come out with something different and focus on authors and providing them with the resources that have often been overlooked, and hopefully changing the lives of some of these authors and giving them a platform they wouldn't have before. So I'm really excited to see what comes out of that, and publish my first book with them, and hopefully many freaking more. So
Yeah.
you wrote a book. Congratulations on that, because
Oh, thanks,
I've
man.
tried that before, and I don't have whatever it is, whatever's running in your bloodline. I don't have that, but I do think I can recognize a good book, and hopefully I'm able to publish a doozy as well. So hopefully we can all start to be the change we want to see. I guess is the phrase.
Yeah.
100%. So how does Bindery work, and how did that come around? Because it's such a cool concept, and again, that's a mark, I think, of publishing changing in a great way, along with self-publishing and the way that's developed over the last 10 or so years. So yeah, how does that work? Tell us more.
So Bindery is essentially a premium community. Some of the people that work at the tippity top there actually came from Patreon. So think of it like it's Patreon for bookish people, specifically designed for bookish people. I've got my own dynamic bookshelf there where I can tag books that I do in articles or reviews, or if I post my YouTube videos there, I'll tag the books in there, and it'll show like all the books that I've recommended, lately and whatnot. Then I also give my some other exclusive content there as well. I've connected it to my Discord community, so I'm able to like interact often with the people in that. But then how it works from the publishing side, when you're with Bindery, if you can kind of like build this robust community that is capable of supporting the publishing process of a book, which costs money, what happens is now that I've demonstrated that, they offered me to have my own imprint under them. So now that I have this imprint, I'm taking half the funds that I would normally get from the subscription fees, from the subscription revenue. I'm putting that into its own little account. And that account is essentially going to fund printing, marketing, all the different resources needed to publish a book.
Yeah.
So my community also gets to be a part of that process. They get to get early chapters and they get to give feedback on covers and so on and so forth. So it's kind of like, you're helping me do this. Now let me bring you into the process. You might get your name in the back of the book as well. You're going to get all these different perks with it. So it's kind of like this cool interactive experience as a benefit to the subscribers, but where it's also helping us build the resources necessary to then publish a book. So there's the two sides of Bindery basically rolled into one there, which is really freaking cool, man. Like,
Yeah.
That's the reason I switched from Patreon to Bindery, because I said, yeah, I would love to get my own imprint. I think I have the community that could support it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I hope I explained that the best way that I could, but I'm super freaking excited, man. We've got Pitch Fest coming April 9th, where unagented independent authors can submit their work and hopefully get matched with one of our imprints, because we have several creators that have their own imprints. And essentially what Bindery is doing is saying, look, we understand the value of influencers and what they can do for book sales. I think authors and publishers are starting to catch on to this as well, right? I mean, Barnes and Noble is opening more stores because Book Talk essentially saved their brick and mortar stores.
Yeah.
We have a ton of influence, and when books catch fire in our space, it moves books at a high rate. And they're just saying, if we can get these highly influential creators who have this community trust, and we can get them to publish books from these authors that may have never been discovered if we didn't have this, we can really do something cool and special. So I really I love the fact that I'm a part of that and I have that opportunity. So yeah, that's the goal. Hopefully this year is publishing a book through that process and bringing the community along with me for the ride.
That is a dream, isn't it? And
awesome.
it always feels like publishing might be like 5 years behind, but you know, we've started to see a couple of like YouTuber, booktuber names on a front cover of a book as a review, which is like really cool to see, see people like publishers are taking it seriously, because you're so right. Like blogs, 10 years ago, blogs were the big thing, and you'd get a lot of traction on your blog. But now, like, who reads nowadays? But people are watching videos, they're watching Book Talk, and it translates very well to sales. We were just looking at like the Will of the Many. On Goodreads, to like looking at the ratings and looking at the numbers and then looking at how many videos on Book Talk there are, and it's like just a crazy amount. And it is, and once you start, I get FOMO if I see someone mentioning a book 2 or 3 times. I'm like, I have to read it, I have to try it, otherwise I feel like missing out. So no, great. And again, that's another instance of publishing changing for the better.
Yeah, we're just talking about how you want it to change, and then you're bringing it yourself. That is just absolutely awesome. Turning kind of the incredible community you have to do some good and bring books into the world. The more the better.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yeah. And some new authors get this. I mentioned Thomas Weaver and Artificial Wisdom before. He was self-published with that. But he understood, like, if I want to get this traditionally published, if I want to get this noticed, I have to go to the creators. And he went one-on-one to me and a few others, and really formed this like close relationship with us. And we did some business, and he moved some books, and now he's being traditionally published through Penguin Random House. He sent me a Christmas card kind of thing. Like, he gets it, he understands it. He showed us the numbers, saying, look at what happens when you plug my book on this day, and look at this. He was very transparent about everything, and very open about it, and very willing to invest in creators and in his and thus in his book. So he got it. And now he's getting a sequel approved, and he's being traditionally published, and it's just awesome to see the success. And you mentioned like seeing the creators on the blurbs on the books. I was actually on his one of my quotes was on his trailer for
Nice.
the book on social media, which
Awesome.
is really, really cool. But yeah, so they're starting to come around. I think you're right. The publishing industry is always going to be 5 years behind. It takes a mountain of data to get them to change their practices and decide where to change up where budgets go. But I think it is happening.
Yeah, yeah. Will hasn't read this book yet, but talk to us about Lonesome Dove because we have to talk about it. It's one of the best books of all time, and it's a huge and it needs more pages. Yeah, tell us your feelings on Lonesome Dove.
850 pages, and I wish it was longer. I didn't want to leave the characters. I immediately ran into the miniseries to watch it. But yeah, I've never been a Western guy. I've seen this book around. I saw Books Are Sick. My buddy Nick read it, and he loved it. I saw my bald book brother Scott read it, and he loved it. He did like a chapter a day type thing with it. And he loved it. And I was like, they got really good taste. I wonder if I would love it. And it is daunting, right? Like 850 pages. Like when I sit outside of if it's a dud, like that sucks. But the moment I picked it up and the writing style of it was so simple yet effective, and the character work was so in depth, just getting inside their head, and just the overall just like vibe to it. Again, just like 250 pages, nothing technically happened. The plot hadn't really kicked off. They were teasing at something happening. Nothing happened. Didn't care. Loved it. Completely sucked in. Every single character that I came across was so masterfully crafted to either make you love them, hate them, be sympathetic towards them. They were all different shades of gray. Just so well freaking done. And the banter in it, the dialogue is top notch. So you've got fantastically fleshed out characters with brilliant banter and interaction between them. And that's before any of the action happens. You're already sold. And then when the action happens and things start to gradually build up over time, you care about these characters in these scenarios, right? So I kind of liken it to, I was in the wrestling business for a while too, the professional wrestling business for a while. And a really good match starts slow, and you kind of like build the psychology of the match and what the themes of the match are going to be as you go. And it just like slowly ramps up to where like in the beginning you're doing headlocks and arm drags and the real basic stuff. And then as the match goes, the moves become bigger and bigger, and the moments become more drawn out and more dramatic. And then you hit the big crescendo at the end. And that to me was Lonesome Dove. It was just crafted in such a way where the pacing just gradually ramped up, and before you realized it, you were just absolutely absorbed in the story and hooked. And I read the last 200 pages in a single day because I had to know. And that's when you know that a book has got you.
Yeah.
Or you just like, I'm just gonna rip through this in a day. I can't put it down. And then again, 850 pages. Go watch the miniseries. Go do it all again in a different in a different format. It really is. I'm very good at tempering my expectations going into books. I had a hard time believing that I was going to come away thinking this is one of my favorite books of all time. Lonesome Dove absolutely exceeded my expectations. And I'm scared to like oversell it to your viewers and whatnot, but like screw it. Like it really is one of the most masterfully crafted books of all time, for sure.
Yeah. It's a crazy book, and Mamertry's style is so unique, but at the same time, like accessible. I think it's got like a really great wry sense of humor, and you've got a different sense of humor for different characters, and like Gus talking about Latin, and then all the shoats and stuff.
Yes,
100 pages in, you're like literally nothing's happened, but the writing style and the characters are so entertaining. And it's not like it's really diverse in terms of like the landscape. It, usually stays the same. It's this, this rugged American plains landscape, and it's dry and it's bitter, but it's just such an amazing book and an amazing story. And Abercrombie himself said it starts as a comedy and ends as a tragedy, and it's so correct. So yeah, Will, you've got to read it.
Yeah, I'm missing out, obviously.
Yeah, you are.
I need to pick it up.
And it transcends genre. I feel like it doesn't matter what your reading taste is. It's a book I would literally recommend to everyone. So
it is your favorite writer's favorite book, right?
Yeah.
Joe Abercrombie loves it. I think it's Stephen King's favorite book. I mean, Joe Abercrombie wrote Red Country is basically a love letter
Yeah.
to Lonesome Dove.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's I think there's a reason why like that's also a book where it's like, okay, if you got past the first 250 pages, um, I think you're just automatically gonna love it.
Yeah.
If you don't DNF it, if you don't DNF Spear Cuts Through Water in the beginning, you're gonna love it. You're
Yeah.
gonna just hang in there.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those books that's absolutely special. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that there's one other book that is like that to me, and it's Shogun. I don't know if you've read Shogun.
Mm.
Um,
I ha I mentioned Books Are Sick earlier, the content creator who's a buddy of mine. He's reading that with his book club
yeah,
this month.
nice.
I am very much considering trying to get it in.
Yeah,
I am just so unbelievably hooked on Dandelion Dynasty. I don't know if I'm going to be able to stop after Wall of
Yeah.
Storms and not go straight into book 3. I still got to read Buffalo Hunter x Hunter for my book club. So I don't know how packed my month is going to be and if I'm going to get to it.
yeah.
I think I'm either going to get to it this month or May. Knowing my taste, do you think that's going to be like one of those books for me?
I think you'll love it. I think there's so much history. The characters are incredible, and it's the best like fish out of water story ever, where the main character is completely helpless, and that brings such an interesting dynamic to it. And I remember reading that when I was like 15, and like me and Papa Gwyn were just like geeking out about it. There's just so many incredible moments, and yeah, I hope you love it. I'm keen to see your thoughts and opinions on it, and hopefully, if you come out and say you love it, then there'll be another 100,000 people wanting to read it. So it's like, yes, more people reading these great books. No, I love it, and that is why another reason why I love watching your videos, because you get that historical balance as well. And for us, who are just obsessed with history, we like do reenactment as well. Like it's so great to see, and yeah, it feels like there's like another brother talking about these historical books. That's
I
great.
love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
So
And it's the year of the thick boy for me too. I'm taking down big freaking books this year. So Shogun's got to be on there at some point.
oh,
for sure.
100%. I'm doing Count of Monte Cristo soon, and I'm terrified of how that is thick. So
Yeah.
I'm excited though. I'm excited.
your arm's gonna be massive after that.
Yeah.
So we've talked about George R. Martin, Joe Abercrombie, Shauna Lawless, Dan Jones, so many authors that we both love. So if you could pick one book or series for us both to read that you think we'll love, what would you pick?
I mean, okay. So have you read Spear Cuts Through Water? Because I've mentioned it a couple times now. Have
Yeah,
either
no,
of
I've
you
read that one.
Ed
Yep.
has.
Okay. What'd you think of it?
I almost DNF'd it, and I was like so close
Right.
at the beginning, and I was like, it's very wacky, it's very weird. And I watched about like 300 reviews of it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to stick with it. I'm glad I stuck with it. I think it was like a book at the wrong time. It didn't connect with me, but I did really see why people love it because of that
Yeah.
amazing style. The turtle was great.
You
As
said
well.
in your review, didn't you, that you're like, I didn't like this, but I think
Everyone
people
else
is gonna
will.
like
I
that
was
favourite
annoyed at
book.
myself.
Yeah.
I'm gonna 100% retry it in the future, because there's a few books like I tried Guns of the Moon years ago, didn't vibe with it at all, and then read it again this year, and I was like, this
Oh yeah.
genius work. So it is about timing sometimes.
Okay. So one of you have read that. Have both of you read Between Two Fires?
I haven't.
I've read it. That's amazing. Yeah.
Okay.
That's so high on my list.
It better be, because this is another fantasy history tie-in, right?
Yeah.
Because it's set during the Black Plague in France, and Bjorn actually speaks French, and the way that he constructs or reconstructs France during that time is so. Why do I have so many things in my hands? It's so masterfully done, and I'm not a big horror guy. But it's kind of like this crazy blend of historical fiction, fantasy, and horror, where like you get pieces of all of them, and you get this like religious element to it too. Yeah, you gotta read it. It's awesome. I didn't love Black Tongue Thief, but I devoured Between Two Fires. Yeah.
I think you should read the Daughter's War, which is the prequel to Black Tongue Thief, because we weren't in love with Black Tongue, were we?
No.
But the Daughter's War is so different, and it reads like Between Two Fires, but even sharper prose, in my opinion.
I mean, I was
Okay.
just talking
Yeah.
about changing fantasy up. He is not afraid to mix it up. He's got
Yeah.
part that's in letter form. He's got part in present day, part flashbacks. It is
Yeah.
incredible what he does. It was my book of the year last year,
Mm.
and I enjoyed Black Tongue Thief, but I didn't love it. It didn't stick with me, so I kind of didn't really have huge expectations. And then me, you, and Papa Gwyn absolutely adored
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Daughter's War last year. So
So good.
please pick it up.
The way I thought of Black Tongue Thief was like, I had a good time with this, but I will never think of this book again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's encouraging to hear that about Daughter's War.
Yeah.
I'm gonna one last try to lay in on a book that neither of you have read. Have either of you read the Lies of the Ajungo by
No,
Moses
I've not heard of it.
Nice.
That's part of the Forever Desert series. Moses Osiatomi, an African-inspired novella. You can read it in a day. So if you don't, I'm going to be very upset. It's a very simple
We'll be
book.
picking it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's one of the only things that has scratched like the spear cuts itch for me. It's so well done, so well done. In 100 pages to pack the punch that it does and establish the world that it does. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And then the next book in the series, The Truth of the Alake, takes place 500 years later, and it's kind of like this examination of how like oral storytelling will shift the narrative over time, and it's got like this like how history like this look at like historiography.
Yeah.
So that's really cool too. And I just read the third book, which comes out later. But as soon as I got the advanced reader copy of it, I devoured it again. So the whole trilogy is amazing. But read The Lies of the Ajungo by Moses Osiatomi.
Count us
and then
in.
Yeah, I think
report
we're going to
back.
have to go away, read your recommendations, and then have another chat.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds
Yeah.
good. Michael, if you could meet one author and like just go out for dinner, go out for a few beers with them, who would you choose?
You know, I think the easy answer is Joe Abercrombie, but I'm actually going to an event May 16th in Georgia.
Oh, nice.
Finally coming over to the States.
Who's
So
he
I've
talking
already
to in Georgia? Who's it he's going with?
I don't even remember, and it
You
doesn't
just see his
matter.
name and you're like, I'm going.
Because he's going around with George R. R. Martin, Robin Hobb. He's got quite a list of like people he's hanging
It's
out.
not one of those because
Yeah,
Hobb
yeah.
is on the West Coast. I'm on the
Okay.
East Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I saw that and I was like, oh, that'd be so cool if it was Hobb. So it's like two of the goats, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to see him. I've done an interview with Emma Southern as well, the Roman historian,
Yeah.
and we had such a good time. You could probably tell if you watched that interview, like how much fun I'm having because I'm just like cheesing the entire time. She is incredible. She said that she would get me a beer if I ever find myself over there. So I would just love to gossip about messy Roman nonsense with Emma Southern for sure. She'd be up there for sure.
Nice.
Nice.
Perfect choice. Well, any more questions for
Well,
you?
I think we can't take up your whole day, and we said we are going to do another chat when we take on these recommendations. That would be awesome. Thank you so much for talking to us about history, fantasy, your incredible imprint, and your story as a content creator. It's been fascinating, and I especially cannot wait to see where the imprint goes.
Yeah, the honor is all mine, y'all. I appreciate y'all having me on and giving me the opportunity to talk with y'all and let me babble on and whatnot. You two are amazing. Pops is amazing. Say hello to Papa Gwyn for me.
We
Give him my
will.
best. Yeah, tell him it was all love bringing up Thought Cage again.
He was laughing so much when
He
he saw
was.
that. He loves it.
Yeah.
I'm like, please don't be mad at me. You know it's all love. My wife just ordered the new Faithful and the Fallen UK editions coming out September.
Awesome.
So like if I can make it up to you that way. But yeah, that was funny. He's a great sport about that stuff. I love the guy to death.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I really do appreciate y'all having me on today. It's been a blast.
Oh, it's been awesome, and happy reading with the rest of today with the Dandelion Dynasty and so much more.
Yeah.
Once again, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for watching. I'll put all of Michael's details in the description below if you're not already following him, which I'm sure you do.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming, Michael. Truth and courage.
The Brothers Gwyn.